Thanks for staying with us. For 5 months and counting, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Asuu, has been on strike to press home its demands, which include a revamp of the nation's university infrastructure, as well as payment of members' salaries through the recommended University Transparency and Accountability Solution, that's called UTAS. Well, that's not all. Part of Asuu's demands also include implementation of the 2009 agreement reached with the federal government, amongst others. And after several meetings between Asuu and the government failed to yield results, the Nigeria Labour Congress is now set to proceed on what it calls a solidarity protest to compel the government to meet Asuu's demands. The two-day nationwide protest, which government has tagged illegal, is scheduled to hold on Tuesday, July the 26th, and the day after, Wednesday. Joining us now in the studio is the Deputy Chairman, Joint Action Front, Achike Chude. Good to see you again. Welcome.
It's always a pleasure.
Right, yeah. Always a pleasure. So, well, there's been a back and forth. The government saying it's illegal, who is NLC to come into this matter. It seems to be in control. Of course, Asuu and NLC and the other affiliates maintaining their ground that indeed an injury to one is an injury to all. So what do you make of this back and forth? There's no going back from your end?
No, I mean, from everything that's on ground, this is one protest that should have taken place a long time ago. But perhaps the NLC did not wade into it directly because they were giving the government an opportunity and the various partners to see how they can resolve this issue that has become intractable. And so they have a duty, they have an obligation. We all actually have a duty and an obligation to ensure that education, the bedrock of national development and progress, is given the kind of attention that is needed. Whatever credibility today, little credibility, for instance, the university system has in Nigeria today, is as a result of the many years of agitation and struggle by Asuu. You can imagine if the Asuu leadership never thought it expedient, never thought it as an emergency, for instance, to try to do something about the rot in the education system, where the university system would be today. Of course, people are talking about the quality of students that are produced from our university system. The government is aware. They did a needs assessment some years back, and the result was frightening. About the state of decay and dilapidation in our university system. And on the basis of that, they made commitments to revamp the university system, not for the sake of Asuu, but for the sake of the country. And unfortunately, we have seen how it goes in Nigeria. It's one thing, but there is a saying that where a man's treasure is, there his heart will be. And so the treasures of our political elites are found in the best educational institutions all over the world, not in Nigeria, and that is why you're having the kind of crisis that you're having in the educational system. So as NLC has a duty and an obligation to do what they're doing, regardless of what people are saying about the legality or illegality of the action. Of course, the man who made that statement about the illegality of the NLC's action was only expressing an opinion. And it is my own opinion that his description of the status of that strike, that protest of the protest is wrong. So he expressed an opinion, and
I wonder if you think that's his opinion or the opinion of the government of the day. And perhaps let me also ask you, what do you consider as the fears of this particular administration as regards protests? Is it in any way connected to the NLC'S protest or the aftermath of the NLC'S protest?
Well, the government is afraid of everything, it appears. Of course, in a season where terrorists are threatening to kidnap the president of the country. So where does that leave you? So they are virtually, afraid of everything, and of course do not have a solution to what is going on. But even beyond that is the fact that even the president himself has passed a vote of no confidence on his own administration over the handling of this Asuu crisis. The president has indicted his government for being irresponsible with regards to what is going on. And you ask me, when did the president say so? The president said this before he took over power. He said that in critiquing or criticizing his predecessor, Goodluck Jonathan and the PDP, he said any government that would allow the nation's institutions, tertiary institutions, to remain closed for so long is an irresponsible government. So you see the thing about life, karma and nemesis, they are doing a very serious work in this in administration, and what goes around comes around. This was what the president said because he was angry. He was asking why, you know, any serious government would allow the nation's institutions, tertiary institutions, to close down, and that it must be an irresponsible government. Some years down the line, he was, confronted with the same thing. He was confronted with an opportunity to engage with the same people, and he did exactly what his predecessors did, yes, perhaps even worse.
Comrade, I remember that particular video. I think it was an interview TVC granted Mr. President in 2014, just yes, before he eventually became Mr. President. But let me ask you, I mean, any meaningful government would express fears about a shutdown of the country. We have not recovered from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We went into recession in this particular administration. There is an ongoing war in Ukraine. The economy has been shattered. We saw the Minister of Finance and Planning, Zainab Ahmed, saying that Nigeria is broke. So I wonder if you think that Mr. Lai Mohammed's position for once may not be right, maybe to an extent, that the strike is uncalled for, because a shutdown would again affect the economy, which is already struggling.
As if they've been interested in the economy. But beyond that, they say a desperate situation calls for a desperate measure. You know, and the reality is that if we had been, adequately politically conscious in this country, if we had been adequately aware of our duties and responsibilities as citizens, we will be shutting down the country every single day until our politicians realize that they have to sit out, that the people are not fools. We should have been doing this, a very long time. So we are all suffering from our, laxity, our inability to truly appreciate the dire political circumstances that we find ourselves in. And that's why the country is tottering on the verge of collapse.
This government has been, of course, will I say now, has gotten more than its own fair share of discontent from university lecturers and even of other subsidiaries. It's not only Asuu that is even on strike. Indeed, there's a total shutdown of the university structure, not just at the federal level, but even the state levels. Asuu has also gone on strike, as well as its affiliates, like I said earlier. So this has been on since February the 14th, and some have said under the principle of collective bargaining, a lot of time has passed. There ought to have been, some give and take on the part of both sides. Where do you stand in this?
You see, collective, bargaining decisions are arrived at as a result of negotiations, and negotiations are entered into, on the basis of a desire, to want to give and take, the basis of the desire to act in good faith. So what we have seen over the years is also acting in good faith, but the government always vitiating whatever agreements they have. You want to ask yourself, why is Asuu on strike? Why are they on strike? They're on strike because there was an agreement, that the government entered into willingly and voluntarily. And then the government now says they are not going to do it. They will not be able to do it, or for whatever reason, that they are not going to implement it. Asuu, of course, gave warnings. They have always done that, because we should always try to appreciate the position of any union that goes on strike. It is always a tremendously difficult situation to find yourself in, where you have to call all your affiliates across the 36 states of the country. You have to discuss with them. You have to negotiate with them. It's even get their buy-in. You also have to spend money, because, they have to travel from one state to the other on a continuous basis to discuss. What do we do? How do we respond to this? And they say, okay, write them, dialogue with, and all of that. And it gets to a level where they realize, look, we are not making any progress because these people think that we are joking or that we are jokers. And you know why this thing has dragged on for so long? It's this understanding. The government, officials feel that they have this understanding that the average Nigerian has a threshold. So allow them to suffer. Allow, hunger to set in, and then they are frustrated. And before you know it, there will be division within the ranks. Some saying, look, let's go back, regardless of what is at stake and the rest, and others holding out. And then they are hoping that the internal, rancor would prevail ultimately at the end of the day, and then the rank of Asuu is broken. But Asuu is not just any other union. Asuu is a completely different union. Asuu has, a collegiate responsibility, and they do things together. Every chapter of Asuu is involved in the negotiating process. Every chapter is involved in the discussion that leads to, a strike. And that's why in most cases they hold on.
Right, and still on the issue of strike, some have also said at this time now, what good have the strikes, brought us? Of course, the unionists are saying they will continue to have this tool at hand, even as a last option, until they get more form of, a sense of a more responsible listening government. Shouldn't Asuu now and other unions be exploring other ways to make government listen?
Other creative ways, maybe.
This is just the kind of statement people who just want to play devil's advocacy will make. Because I understand the situation you find yourself in. You must be seen at least to look at the other side one way or the other. But the reality is that they have always explored. We talk about dialogue. The government talks about dialogue. It was dialogue that led to the 2009 agreement, which the government unilaterally vitiated. It is dialogue that led even to this situation, because they kept on informing the Nigerian public. We have gotten in touch with the government. The government is not listening. Then they started the process of warning strikes. The government still did not listen, because believe me, you have a government. And look, you ask yourself, how committed are these people to Nigeria? When Bill Gates came to the country some time ago, he was asked a question by journalists. What are the two most critical sectors in a nation? He mentioned two: education, healthcare. We understand why he also included healthcare, because it is critical. Because you have an existing, healthcare issue at every particular point in time. So that is critical, that is important. But education is the base on which you build your healthcare. Just yesterday, I was listening to the Minister of Aviation, Haji Sirika, talking about, not happy about that aviation workers are also
want to join
in the strike. And I chuckled to myself, I smiled, and I said, oh, yeah, now they feel it. When they had a crisis, the planes were to shut down in the country, the airlines. Immediately the government responded. Why did the government respond? Because they have to travel. They cannot travel by road, because their incompetence and inability to keep Nigerians safe also makes them unsafe when they travel by road. So air travel is important. And the Minister of Aviation was now suggesting that perhaps, aviation should be declared a critical national security matter. And I smiled and I said, look, why would he, say that when education should even be more critical, should be a national security imperative, because it is education that is on top of education that you build every other sector. And the crisis of insurgency and insecurity that we're having in this country, where do you think it is coming from? It's the lack of education in the country. And so the government did not find anything useful for the citizens, especially the youth of the country. A lot of them, the devil has found what. Because what education does is that education enhances the person, enhances the mind, and elevates the person. You understand? And so when you want to lead people astray, you want to get them to do things that are antisocial. A person with an elevated mind, realizes that, look, this is not for me. And so these people have nothing to lose, because they have not been sufficiently educated, and then poverty has become part of the consequences of misgovernance in the country. So it's easy for the devil to find work for them.
So again, I'll stick to probably what the government might be dreading. When you shut down a country, who suffers the most? The elites or the average Nigerian? Can you just answer that before I give you a follow-up question?
Yeah. Well, I think it has to get to a situation in this country where, for me, where people no longer see a difference between living and dying, and when that distinction can no longer, be determined, then the people will realize that they need to do something in order to build their country. Because
there's so much hunger in the land at the moment. I must remind you, there's a serious hike. I've had to visit the markets myself, and I tell you what. So
to get a first-hand assessment.
That question should go to the people, to the Nigerian people. Ask them if they are ready to suffer for the next 1-2 weeks and get everything right. Be in a position to feed their children.
Because they've suffered
before,
for 1 week and even more than 1 week.
And fulfill their economic ambitions. You know, ask them that, and then, you know, to continue to suffer for the next 5-10 years.
They have suffered this kind of shutdown. They have suffered this kind of industrial action before. And in the end, nothing changed.
No, because even they realized that it was not properly well done. If it was done properly, and you teach the political class in this country, the irresponsible political elites that we have today in this country, the right kind of lesson, they will respond.
I mean, not all of them are responsible.
But are the results even likely to change now?
Yeah, because I'm wondering what the NLC is willing to do differently. They have been described as a toothless bulldog.
You were asking
they have been tagged as Nigerians who have compromised, who have failed the workers.
Who are you talking about?
The NLC.
The NLC.
So I'm wondering, all of a sudden,
they have
magic?
They have their issues.
What
they have their issues.
What will ensure a determination? What are they going to do differently?
Even in fairness, I think Mr. Chude's first remarks were that, you know, this call for action on the part of NLC and, of course, the affiliate ought to have even come earlier than now.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, there's no doubt about that. And the fact that a man, you know, failed once doesn't mean he cannot get up. They have had their issues. Nigerians have not been happy with them, but there are times they have also stood up to be counted, just like this particular point in time. So we hope that we push it to its logical conclusion. Our children need to get back to the university. You know, and again, there's no need flogging the issue. It's of critical importance to this nation. It's a national security objective and imperative to get our school system to work so that we can produce the right kind of you know, people to lead this country in the years ahead.
Right. Mr. Achike Chude, we'll let you go at this point now. It's a Monday morning, no doubt you have some more engagements to make.
Please, I'm just going to tell him, please,
thank you.
Comrade, tell the NLC that this time around, if eventually they go on this protest, they should do it right and do it well.
Can you say that in 10 seconds?
And assure Nigerians that indeed they won't compromise.
Yes, well, you see, it's now they are worried about their past, because it is the past that is catching up with them, and that's why these comments are coming. And I think the comments are in order, and I hope that lessons have been learned from some of their past failings.
Deputy Chairman, Joint Action Front, Achike Chude, always a pleasure having you with us. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Comrade.
Thank you. Yeah.